Welcome to episode 29 of the CatchMark SportsNet podcast. I'm here with Scott DeCamp.
Good morning.
Morning, Scott. And Zachary Zweigle.
Hello, good morning.
Zach, we missed you around here.
I miss being here.
It sucks only seeing you once in a while.
Yeah.
So how's baseball going?
It's going. We're turning it around a little bit.
It's going?
It's going. I'm optimistic.
Yeah, good.
For sure.
And then our guest today is legendary North Muskegon track coach. He's smiling like saying legendary is not an appropriate word, but I'm going to use it. Al Karaba. And wow. Al, it's welcome to the podcast. It's wonderful to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Al, this is the first time I've ever met you. It's nice to meet you. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been at North Muskegon for 33 years. I've taught there math and science for all of that time. I'm a Michigan State grad, Muskegon Catholic.
Go green.
Yep. Go white.
Yeah.
I'm a Muskegon Catholic grad, so I've been in Muskegon pretty much my whole life. Kids have all gone to North Muskegon. It's been a great place for me, and I've really enjoyed my time, and my time is not done there.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you announcing something on the podcast today?
No, I'm not retiring from teaching yet. So, but I'm going to be out of the coaching biz after the end of the season. So, it's been a lot of fun and an enjoyable time for sure.
What's your favorite part about coaching and teaching?
Well, the teaching part, I think, is just the energy that you get every day from the students. It's a different kind of a job altogether. I know that when I'm not at school, I just don't seem to have that kind of energy sometimes like I get when I get from the students at school. And so they bring a lot out of me that I really appreciate and I really enjoy. And so athletics does the same thing for sure. So I like that part of it, and I certainly will miss that part of it in terms of the coaching aspect. But I'll still have the teaching part of it to rely on, and I feel like I'll always be involved in education at some point, for the rest of my life, because it's that important to me, and I've really enjoyed it. So
that's awesome. So, wife, kids. You said your kids are all graduated from North Muskegon. What's your whole family up to?
Well, my wife Megan is the head of the Muskegon Area Promise, and
awesome.
She's very busy at this time of year at awards assemblies and everything, and certainly busy with that and her expanded role and the expansion of that, and something that she's really proud of and she's done a great job with, and I'm really proud of her for that. 6 children.
Holy moly.
4 out of the house right now, so married, 4 grandchildren, 1 on the way.
Congrats.
Wow. And then 2 children still at home, Whitney, who's a senior, and TJ, who's a freshman. So we are busy watching events. Whitney ran track this year, and so that was really nice for me to have that experience, to have her on the team. And TJ just getting started. He's playing baseball, so we've been watching a lot of baseball, and he's involved in a lot of other things. So we are very busy. But that's a fun part about it, and it's been great for us.
Back to the Muskegon Promise, what a great thing. When I was in Kalamazoo, I worked in Kalamazoo for 13 years. That's when the Kalamazoo Promise launched, and that was both wonderful programs. I just wish that my daughter would obey our wishes for her to use that promise, but she wants to go away. She's going to Michigan State. I go, can't you go to use that promise for a couple of years? She goes, no, I want to go to Michigan State. Okay.
Well, it certainly is a fabulous opportunity that the business leaders and the leaders in the community have really invested in, and for it to be able to expand after COVID and a lot of people taking that is really a testimony to the strength of it and the continued success of it. Certainly, its grade point average has expanded now, so it actually has allowed more kids the opportunity to do it, and I know the hope is that will continue to expand as time goes on, and certainly my wife Megan is hoping to see that continue. But again, a great thing for Muskegon County for sure.
Yeah.
So what drew you into teaching?
Well, I'm from a family of teachers, uncles and aunts. My mom was a teacher. And so I was around education my whole life, at schools a lot. And so that really is. It was kind of a natural for me, something I wanted to do. My sophomore year in college, when I was at Muskegon Community College, I got a call from Ken Diamond to come help.
I know Ken well.
Help out at Muskegon Catholic as a ninth grade football coach, because they were in the process of trying to hire that. And so I came in and helped out there. And at that point, it was pretty easy, right? I knew where I wanted to go. I knew what I wanted to do. And, certainly the teaching part for me has been the most important. Coaching I don't really identify myself that way. I identify myself as the teacher first, and then the coaching part of it certainly comes with that. But, that's certainly, why I got into it, and it was kind of a natural.
Nice. I mean, coaching and teaching are very similar. I mean, you could almost use them synonymously in the business world. They do, right? You hire a leadership coach or a communication coach. They're really teaching you how to be a better leader. So it's a natural fit, I think, sometimes. So
yep, for sure.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Scott.
No, I was looking at Zach because he's been doing some subbing.
Yeah.
What's that experience been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think the biggest a challenge or adjustment has been going back and forth between the high school and the middle school, because they're so different. They're so the same, but they're so different. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but they present their own challenges, and they also present their own rewards too.
Right. I've been down in the middle school now for about the last 18 or 19 years. I started mostly high school when I started at North Muskegon, and at North Muskegon, being a small school, you're going to go where you're needed. So I have some high school and some middle school years, but mostly middle school, and I really enjoy it. That's a strange thing probably to hear from somebody, especially after subbing in the middle school. It's a different animal altogether, for sure. I would agree with Zach on that. But as I've been told by several people, I'm kind of a middle schooler myself at times. So
was that a compliment, or was that a
sure, you bet, right?
Oops. Was that Namath again?
I take it that way.
Drew said it.
He's probably one of them for sure.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So how big of a challenge has it been coaching track at a small school? And I only say that because of numbers, because in a sport like track, helps to have numbers. I mean, obviously.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you're looking at the success of your track program is how many dual meets you're going to win or how many titles you're going to win, then obviously, numbers is a huge issue, because, besides having the high-end athletes to compete, you also need to fill events and be competitive in all those events. And there are years where we've had, some very successful teams that have finished very high, regional champions. We won a state title in the girls back a while ago. And then there's years where we've had, 6 or 7 athletes on a team. And so you work with what you have. We try to get the kids better in their events. By the time we get to regionals last Saturday, our hope is that's their best performances in the events that they want to be the best in. That's always worked. My former coaching partner, Doug Clark, who was also here for 33 years, and so he retired last year from coaching. That was always our thing. Let's look at the regional meet. Schools our size, see where we're at that point, do the best we can at getting you to the state finals if that's, where you're going to be, and then go from there. So, it's always a challenge when you see the first few days and you're like, okay, how is this all going to work out? But by the end of the year, it usually does, and it works out really well. So but a challenge. Sure. Yeah.
Well, it's nothing you control, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, you can kind of control getting more kids to maybe go out, but public schools are cyclical, right? Like, so some years you're going to have athletes, some years you're not. And so, I like that approach, right?
There's years where we have a lot of kids that are football players, guys that will come out. And so this year we have a lot of young ninth graders who are out for track for the first time or haven't run in high school before, so they're out. And they've been great, but it's hard as a ninth grader to be really super competitive, and so you end up taking a beating in a track meet every once in a while, and that's not easy. I know my freshman year, I ran at Muskegon Catholic, and it took a little bit of getting used to. you're going to see a lot of people beat you, and that's okay. You know, you just have to know that you're getting better. So look at what you're doing, and not necessarily the results. But
what year did you graduate from Catholic?
do we have to?
Yeah, we do.
I'm going somewhere with this.
1984 is my graduating year.
Well, I was asking that because that was, I mean, when I say heyday of Muskegon Catholic Central football, that goes on a long time.
Right.
But back in the 80s, I mean, they were a bigger school than Class B. And
Yeah, we
you were on the football teams then?
Yeah, I played football, Muskegon Catholic. Had Pete Kuchis, Mike Holmes, Ken Diamond, Dean Jewett, Denny Barnes. Those were my high school coaches. So, I got a pretty good background of football and just, how to do things correctly from those guys. And I really appreciate everything they did for me. Mike Rebecki also in that group. And so we had 133 in my graduating class, to get back to the topic. Mm-hmm. So we were Class B at that point. I think we moved to Class C my senior year, so we actually played basketball in Class C at that point. And so, it's that Muskegon Catholic has changed a little bit in terms of numbers. Still very competitive in a lot of things. Muskegon Catholic was great for me, and I owe a lot to everybody at Muskegon Catholic who had a big hand in getting me where I was.
So you played football. What other sports did you play?
I played basketball and ran track. So, I was 3 sports for 4 years, and I was in a household where, hey, if you're not going to play, you're going to work.
Yeah, you can do something.
I had really no desire at 16 and 17 to be in a full-time job at that point, or any job at that point. So, but I wanted to play too. I mean, it was a little bit of a different era where everybody kind of played everything. Yep. And I did a lot of stuff in the summer with Walt Galkowski. We did some basketball stuff, and obviously we did football weight training, but there wasn't a lot of the club opportunities or any that I'm aware of at that point in like 82, 83 that there are now. And so I wanted to play. I enjoyed it. It was part of who I was, and my daughters have all done that. Every one of our, my kids have been involved in sports for 3 seasons for 4 years because it's fun. You don't get that opportunity. Most everybody doesn't get that opportunity after high school. So why not use it when you can get it? So,
you talking about the mentors, the coaches you had, Jewett, Kuchis, all those guys. Obviously, it goes way beyond football. It's stuff that you learn that you take with you the rest of your life. Like people ask, what's the objective of high school sports? No, it's not to get scholarships in college. It's about learning life lessons and overcoming adversity and just working with the team and all those things. So
yeah, absolutely. And when I started at North Muskegon, I was very fortunate to be under 2 guys, Dave Cook and Ed Schroeder, who were doing football at that point. And really, they shaped who I was coaching-wise, probably more so than anybody that I've been around. I spent an enormous amount of time with those guys. When you're coaching football, you spend an enormous amount of time together, whether you like it or not. It's just the nature of the beast. And, I learned a whole lot about not just coaching, but how to deal with, all of the day-to-day things that go along with coaching, which is, you don't always see those things. And I learned a lot those 13 years of working with them before I eventually became the head varsity football coach at North Muskegon. So, for those guys, they really, gave me a lot of background that I appreciated to this day.
Mm-hmm. So did you, from Muskegon Catholic, where'd you go to college? Did you play college athletics?
Well, I went to St. Joe's College in Rensselaer, Indiana for a year.
I've been to Rensselaer.
Actually. We've been through it, right?
Well, no, actually, I've been to it. I've stayed there. We our business supports a lot of large dairy farms.
Yep.
And so Fair Oaks Dairy is in the Rensselaer area.
Oh, yeah. Then the White Castles factory is also there.
Yeah.
The excitement of
small
Central
world.
Indiana,
I spent a bunch of time down there. There is not a lot to do. So.
For sure. I went down there, and my intent was to play football, and that didn't work out, and I wasn't really cut out to be a college athlete. I just I didn't have the size for it, and it's a commitment that I wasn't at that time ready to make as a 18 or 19-year-old.
I think I think a lot of kids they don't really conceptualize the amount of work that even at the smallest level of college athletics, the time that you have to put in to be successful is, I think you see a lot of kids that maybe even have the talent to do that at the next level, but they get there and they're like, holy cow, like it's a whole nother level, right?
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, there's a lot of those kids think they can just continue what they're doing in high school.
And it's gonna,
and I'm just going to step it up a step and do it in college, and it's not the same thing.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And my maturity level at that point was not where it needed to be to do that. And I realized that pretty early on. I came back went to Muskegon Community College for a year, and then I went on to Michigan State, where I graduated from. So there was some maturing that I needed to do during that time for sure. High school was pretty easy for me, and I needed to make some changes, and those things happened in college, and it was good for me. It was a good thing that needed to happen. Okay, you're not a college athlete. You what are you going to do now? Let's focus on what you're going to do. And so it kind of got me in the right direction at that point. So
it's funny because you talk about maybe like I had a meandering path too.
Yeah, so
in
did
college. I think a lot of people probably do.
Yeah.
When I played baseball for a year and a half, played a community, kind of you just get tired of it. It's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like to your point, Brent. Even at the lower level, a JUCO, it's still a lot of work. It's
Absolutely.
Feels like a job.
Yeah, you have to love it, right?
You do.
That's my experience with everything. Is like you find out how much you actually love it, how much you care.
Right. I dated a girl at Western who was on a 4-year soccer scholarship, and I mean she was an all-stater, amazing soccer player in high school, and watching the amount of time and effort that she put in to compete at a Division I level, it was just like, I'm like, I don't know how people do it. Like it is just not, I mean, like every spare moment she's working out, she's running bleachers, she's doing like, I mean, and she was a great athlete, right? Like, so yeah, it's crazy.
So believe it or not, being a sports writer now, my college or my career path started in the math and science field. I bring that up because I know that's the field you're in. And how did you make it through that at Michigan State?
Scott, well, that's a good question.
My dad might tell you that. I don't know how he did either. It was, that was the area that I knew that I wanted to teach in. I was a physics major and a math minor, and I knew that the math minor was going to be the ticket at that point in the late 80s. There were not a lot of teaching jobs available, and so you had to really make yourself marketable to do that. And so I made sure that I had a couple of things that I could do, and I was done with school and found out that North Muskegon had an opening, and so I came over and interviewed for that, and I happened to have all of the things that they were looking for. I could teach physics, I could teach math, I could coach just about anything, sort of, at that point, or at least was willing to do those things. And that was really the time of education where you needed those people to do that. So
it's kind of rare that especially during that time, like a lot of people that I know that are, I'd say early 80s to even maybe early 90s that went into teaching, a lot of them didn't start where they grew up. You know what I mean? A lot of them ended up back here eventually, but like there just wasn't a tremendous amount of opportunities. I mean, how lucky that like right in your backyard, basically, like an opportunity made itself available.
Right. Well, it was purely kind of lucky that the position came up. The person that was in the position that I took happened to get a job at Grand Haven, and it came open, and literally. I interviewed for the job at the beginning of August, found out about it, had another interview in Lexington, Croswell, on the other side of the state, and was fortunate enough to be offered both jobs because I had the physics part that they needed and the math, and decided to come to Muskegon at that point. And so we loaded up the van, in the moving van, and we moved that day, and I started the day after that. So it was a big change for.
Could you ever imagine that 33 years later did you figure that was it? Like when you took the job, you're like,
no, I don't know that anybody does. I mean, you just don't know the path that your life is going to take you on. And I was just fortunate enough to fit in there. And I'm not necessarily the most, outgoing, dangerous seeker guy. So
risk averse.
Yeah, right. Yeah. At times, right. So the job has been really good. North Muskegon has treated me very, very well. All the people that I've worked for there have been great. And my kids were there. And so at that point, it was like, do I really want to, move? Do I really want to do these things?
Yeah.
And I had one opportunity early on in my career to make that change. And I just decided at that point with my wife then that this was where I wanted to be. And if I had to go back and change anything, I wouldn't change anything at that point right now. So.
Backing up just a touch and going on a tangent, which I'm known to do.
Yeah.
We love it, Scott.
I know. So
it's math work
at Michigan, at Michigan State, I met Joe Grimm there. I knew the name, but we were in the same dorm, I believe, together. But that's Brent's lookalike, is Joe Grimm. Every time I see that guy, I'm
now
like,
I'm looking
that's
him
not
up.
Brent.
I'm looking him up now.
So, but yeah, he went to Michigan State. Now I know he's back in the area. Isn't he working at Benton Baker?
Oh, you showed me a picture.
Joe,
I did.
I
we
got
saw him.
Joe's a former
that's
I see him all the
I forgot
time.
about that. Yeah.
I see him. It seems like I see him everywhere now.
Joe is a former student of mine. I had Joe in class. I have both of his sons in class, and so Joe and I go way back. Joe's a great guy. He's been very supportive of the North Muskegon schools. I know he would say he's very appreciative of what North Muskegon did for him, and we're very appreciative of all the support that he's given our athletic program. So
Yeah, that's funny though.
So you mentioned having his kids. Have you had any students' grandkids? I actually had this discussion with Mr. Eslick, Goldman Eslick at Montague, because he's retiring and he's been doing it. I had him in high school. He's had all my kids, and we got on that subject. So he had not yet. He said he would retire before he had any grandkids, and he stayed true to his word. So
no, I don't. I don't think so. Nobody's told me that
Not
yet.
that you're aware of.
Nobody's told me that yet. Yeah, I've had a lot of former students' kids. That started probably about, I don't know, it's 12 years ago or 13 years ago, maybe even longer than that, where I had the first one. And then, you had my mom in class, you had my dad in class.
Yeah.
For the most part, I do know that.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, it's like, really? Oh, yeah, right. So the kids are always, we do that. That's our first activity of the year. All right, stand up if I had your mom or dad in class. And so, first time maybe one kid stands up. I think this year in 1 hour I had 7 kids stand up. So it's a fun part of what, being a teacher and having been around that long.
So you're retiring from coaching. Why? Like, is it just time? Like, I mean, I guess, explain that a little bit.
With track and field, my partner Doug Clark and I started. Doug started in North Muskegon in 1988, and he took over coaching track at that point. I came in 1989, and immediately he and I hit it off. We were obviously the youngest 2 people on staff, and our wives at the time knew each other really well and had been friends, and so we hit it off immediately. And so we started doing it together at that point, never envisioning that 33 years later we'd still be doing it together. And so last year there was really talk that we would go out together. But with my daughter Whitney running track and her finishing her senior year,
stay around.
it was important for me to see that through. So it's bittersweet. I mean, I love track and field. I love coaching, but it's also, it's time. With 5 grandkids, our 4 and 1 on the way, and a busy family life, and trying to watch the kids, younger kids, as they're doing stuff. It's a good time to step away from.
Well, I think it's a wise thing to do too. Opportunity for other people too. I mean, it's not a closed chapter, right? Like, absolutely. It creates opportunity for somebody else, and maybe you're more of a mentor. So I think that's right. That's a really good way to look at it. Yeah.
It's been really nice because one of our former athletes for Doug and I, Phoebe Schroeder, has taken over the girls'
awesome.
side of of track and field, and one of the things that Doug and I wanted to have happen was someone that really, track and field meant a lot to them, and I know it meant a lot to her. And so having her as my assistant this year, really not my assistant, she's been the girls' coach, and I've been the guys' coach. Having her around has been great, and she's going to continue doing it, and we'll find someone good to fill my spot, and it's going to continue on. So that I think has probably been the most enjoyable part of this season, knowing that it's in great hands.
That's awesome. So best athlete you've coached, best athlete you've seen coaching.
Well,
I know that's a long time to go back and try.
Well, Drew, if I don't say Drew's name, he's probably going to be mad at me. So I'll say Drew, but I only coached Drew in 8th grade. Now, in Drew in 8th grade, I had him in geometry. This is a good story. I had him in math class as an 8th grader, and he showed up late one day for class, or he didn't have something done, and so we went up to Whitehall to play a middle school game, and I didn't start him at that point, and come on, you got a 6, he was 6, probably 9 at that point, or 6'8" or 6'9".
That's nuts.
And he got it, he knew, then he gets in the game, and he dunks twice in a middle school game. And so all I said to the opposing coach, which I believe was Kirk Michelson at that point, was, I taught him how to do that. So, yeah, certainly someone that's exceeded at that level, has been, probably certainly the most recognizable.
Yep.
There's been a lot of really good football players that I've been around and coached, and try to narrow it down would be very difficult. Track and field wise, certainly we've had some great kids, some state champions. But Drew probably is.
Drew?
Is
Were you nudging Drew? Hey, MSU.
Well, another, not to keep telling good Drew stories, because I have a lot of those that some can't be shared on air, but when Drew was getting recruited, we had every single coach, you're standing at a Tuesday night game and somebody says hi next to you, and you turn and it's Tommy Amaker from U of M, and so it's like, you don't know what to say.
Sure.
But, when on National Signing Day, Drew was in my physics class, so he's, getting calls from all over the world or all over town. And he said, I have to call Coach Izzo, he goes, can I do it from your classroom? This is pre-cell phone era. And I said, sure, go ahead. And so he calls Coach Izzo and he says, yeah, I was just, Coach K said I could use his phone. And he said, Izzo stopped and said, Coach K, what do you, no. He goes, no, Coach Karaba, right? and he goes, oh, okay. So,
Love it.
For a minute, I was confused with one of the greatest coaching legends of all time.
That's awesome.
That
is good.
You mentioned before the cell phone era. Man, that's not that long ago, is it?
Well, I'm
Holy
trying to
cow.
think of, is Drew
We're all getting old.
2002, 2003? I mean, cell phones were around, but, you're talking
Kids didn't have
carrying
them.
a
They weren't-
walkie-talkie or a giant.
Yeah, the Zach Morris
right.
cell
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
They weren't as prevalent. Hey, one thing I wanted to touch on a minute ago I didn't have the chance to was longevity. I did a podcast with 4 baseball coaches from the West Michigan Conference in a profile, and combined they have 131 seasons of head coaching experience. And, I mean, it just seems like you just don't see it. Obviously, you see it with you see it with Kirk, you see it with certain coaches around the area and in the conference. But what do you think goes into that, and why do you think maybe you just don't see it quite as much anymore?
Well, it's certainly a time commitment thing, I think, probably more so than anything. In order and you look at things like football and basketball, which have turned into completely, they were year-round when I was doing football, so, I was involved in that year-round, but the time commitment is really the biggest thing. And
Do you think that's good, or do you think that's bad, or is it? Are you indifferent?
well, I have certain things about football that I have my opinions on, and while I like the certain parts of how the football has changed over the course of the 30 years, I think it's also driven a lot of people out of the game. Just because of the time
Right.
commitment.
I tend to agree with you. I think that there's especially at small schools. I think bigger schools weather that a little bit better. There's enough athletes there that you're trading if you like rating them, you're trading a 79 for an 80,
Sure.
But at a small school, I think that it definitely hurts because you get these fringe athletes that they have the one sport that they love. They would play other sports, but they simply can't commit the time to do them all year round. And it almost feels like, would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, well, and sometimes the success at a small school is really dependent on 2 or 3 people.
right.
I mean, you can change the complete fortunes of basketball
Absolutely.
if one person plays or doesn't play. I'll use a good example about football. I was, talking to some of the kids about my experience playing football, and we had 2 weeks of 2 practices a day, and then a third week of practice, and then we had our first scrimmage on Friday. So, when I was playing, we had 24 practices, and then we had our first scrimmage. And then we got to Labor Day, and then we played our first game on Friday. So the amount of practice time that we had together was and conditioning and all of those things was considerably more. I mean, this year we go 5 days, and you're scrimmaging some teams the next Wednesday. So you're looking at 5 days and maybe 7 or 8 practices before you're playing, you're scrimmaging, and then you're playing that next Thursday.
I mean, how much football stuff did you do year round when you played though? Because I remember basketball was kind of my sport, right? And we had a week-long team camp in the summer. Other than that, it was, here's some stuff you need to do and work on, and go play in the driveway or go play at the park, right? Is that similar for you, like when you were in school?
We did a lot. I mean, I was a kid who enjoyed my summers, but I knew what things I had to do. So Galkowski would have a week of basketball where we played in a couple of tournaments. We played up in Whitehall 2 summers in a row where Coach Mark Will had a summer couple of games or scrimmages with teams to come in. And so we were able to do that, and the weight room was open 3 days a week, and we were there 3 nights, 3 in the evening, 3 evenings a week, and doing some running and lifting at that. But at that point, that was really, kind of what the off season looked like for most everybody. We were just fortunate enough at Muskegon Catholic to have a lot of guys that played and then were good, good players. And so, I was around a lot of those good guys.
Zach, you got to chime into this. Plus, you're being awfully quiet. So.
Yeah.
So, but with your age demographic, what was it like for you coming up playing sports, and as far as summer commitments, etc.?
Well, I would say that I was probably right on the cusp of when everything was changing, or at least making the huge jump. Basketball started to pick up, where it wasn't a team camp and a few days a week where you could shoot or lift. It was, starting to become every day, every week, during the summer and in the off season, and in the morning during the school year, you come in and shoot or, work out. Football was like that too. Football was it was every single day. And then baseball, there was travel leagues all summer long. That really wasn't around when I was growing up. It was when I was in high school, probably in my freshman, sophomore year, it started to really, really kick in. And I feel like it's as crazy as it's ever been. A lot of these kids' schedules is just nuts now.
So I'm going to take us off on a little winger here. So I was reading an article the other day, 7% of kids actually play college athletics after high school.
Right.
Is the amount of time that we're expecting high school athletes to put in commensurate? As a business person, it makes absolutely no sense. I'm going to tell you that. Like you're spending a gazillion dollars and you're spending all this time in a sport, and you're not going to, the good things about sport are teamwork and collaboration. You're getting all that without spending that time. So is it accurate or fair to ask? I mean, are we doing our kids a disservice? I guess I'm laying a heavy question on everybody here. So,
well, it's a double-edged sword because there's the people who do it because they just like to play.
Sure.
And so if you're playing in a let's use basketball as an example. If you decide to play in an AAU team or whatever it is, and you just like to play basketball or you love it and you want to get better at it, and that's why you do it, and you like the camaraderie of it, then I think it's absolutely, in your best interest. If the investment that you're putting in those is I got to invest in this so I can get a college scholarship, that might happen, but it might not.
Yeah.
I mean
93% would say it's not. And of those 7, like not a lot of them. A lot of those are Division III community college type athletes, right?
And you worry about people that have the resources, some people don't have the resources
Right,
to do that.
Right.
And, I think in the Muskegon area, we've done a pretty good job of all of our clubs here trying to present something that's affordable
Right.
for everybody. And so they're not pricing anybody out. I mean, you go to Chicago and you go to, some of the top volleyball clubs there, and you're looking at paying $9,000 or $10,000.
Right.
Plus travel expenses to be seen. Now that they'll tell you you're going to be seen by college coaches, and you probably are. But what if you invested that $9,000? Or $9,000 a year for 6 years that you did this.
Right.
How much money would you have for your kids' college at that point?
You can almost pay for it. Real close, depending on where you went to school.
20 years ago, sure.
Yeah,
right.
right.
Yeah, but still, right.
But I mean, when you add all the gas, the hotel stays, you're not just talking about playing. I mean, you're talking about all of it. And I agree with you. For the love of the game, I think is kind of where you're going. I'm going to go back to basketball. Montague Township Park, when I was a kid, every single night at about 6 o'clock till about 10 o'clock, nonstop basketball being played. High level, great competitions. It's vacant, right? It was free. We show up, the lights come on, you go play, right? And so I don't know. I'm somewhere in the middle of that. If a kid really wants to grow at their craft, I think those philosophical questions are good to talk about and ask. So
yeah.
What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you a little bit. I think that like what are you sacrificing by packing your schedule with average? Like a lot of these travel teams are pretty average competition. How, like maybe they're good in the area, but how good are they when they go to Detroit or Chicago or and a lot of those kids, I've had a lot of those kids that say, well, holy cow, this summer was a little bit of a wake up call for me because I got to see some real competition. I remember when I was playing travel ball, baseball. I can just speak from my experience in high school. I was one of the better players in the area, and I went to Grand Rapids. I played for Diamonds, and I started on their C team when I was a freshman, sophomore, and made it up to their B team. And I would pitch occasionally on their B team, not even good enough to play their top 9, 10, 11, 12 guys in the Grand Rapids area. And it's just a wake up call. I mean, they don't. And now there's so many travel teams. You're not telling me that all those kids are going on to play college, or they all have the, and although I do agree with you, for the love of the game, if a kid really does enjoy it and they just want to play more,
or if they're really exceptional. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the other thing. Nate McLeod needs to go play. Drew Namick, if there's stuff available, he needs to go play. But
they know those they will get pulled. Like they don't even have to try to.
And Drew played high level AAU. He was out in Las Vegas. He was, and he did that right away.
Yeah.
He's a 6 foot fifth grader.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Coordinated. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, you knew. You know. And so, I think I would agree with Zach there. I think you see. It's an eye opener for some, certainly. My oldest 2 daughters played volleyball at Michigan State. And one of the things that we kind of emphasized was, at least when they were younger, is, we're not going to, spend a lot of time playing club volleyball. They were able to, Ted Edsel would have open gyms up here in Whitehall. Yeah. And so they were fortunate enough to be able to come up and just play, during the off season and do that. And they did play some club eventually in Muskegon. But we kind of emphasize that. And most people that are volleyball people would say, you're probably not going to be able to do what they did these days. And and that might very well be true. We just happen to fall into the right spot where my oldest daughter, worked out pretty well.
I believe that if you're a phenomenal athlete, if you're really going to be next level, I just find it hard to believe that if you can slam a volleyball and you can jump out of the gym, somebody's going to find you.
Yeah, you'll rise to the top.
Do you not? I guess, what's your opinion on that?
So certainly football and basketball, that's the case. They'll find you. I believe that in football and basketball. Nobody that's really, really good. I don't necessarily know in some of the, and I'm not familiar with, some of the high levels of the other sports. I feel like, parent asked me, well, how did your daughter, how did that happen? How did you? I said, well, she went to camp she wanted to go to Michigan State, so we went to camp at Michigan State.
Right.
And we made it clear that she wanted to be there, and she was good enough that they recognized at practice that she was there. Mm-hmm. Would they have found her had we not done that? I don't know.
Not.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so there's different sports. I feel like it's different.
I would agree with you. A sport like golf or wrestling, sure. I think you need less of that publicity because you're posting scores and you can compare against, hey, this kid went out and he wrestled this wrestler, right? And I talked a little bit about that, right? And sometimes you got to go to those tournaments to get that
sure.
To wrestle that competition. Golf, if I shoot 69 at a golf course, it's the same golf course that somebody else might have, so I agree with you somewhat with that. I guess I just always wonder about I feel like it's expanded past those elite level athletes, and it's gone into now it's just this system that we've created that am I off on that? Am I being crazy, I guess?
Personal opinions aside,
right.
I don't think you're that far off there. And again, it depends on the sport.
Yeah.
Are the best players in certain sports always recognized? Or are they always found? I don't know. And are there kids that could be really high level collegiate athletes in a sport really
For sure.
really noticed, or are they missing out on being noticed because they can't afford to go to a high level tournament or
which is a whole nother problem, right?
Right.
Like I'm not even talking about that. That's
right.
a whole nother
exactly.
issue, right?
Exactly.
Like,
And so some sports have turned more into that, where it's more of a, the coaches only have to do certain things to, it's one-stop shopping.
Yeah.
Volleyball is certainly that way, where there are about 5 really high-level tournaments a year. In this, Louisville and Chicago would be 2 examples of it. And so all the coaches,
that's where they go.
Yeah, and it becomes sort of a one-stop shopping, for them. And so, the people recognize that, and they want, and so they have to get their, their athletes there if that's what they really want, and is it what the kid really wants, or is it what mom and dad really want?
Yeah,
too,
so we've gone through this a little bit with my middle guy Owen. I mean, he was on the varsity in basketball his freshman year, and he's travel teams talked to him, want him to play, and the other piece of that is rarely with the travel teams do they get the practice time, which is what I think makes a player better, right? So what happens is it's one practice a week with this team of guys that you're not playing with in high school most of the time. It's a group. And then you're in a tournament all weekend. And I think playing is better than not playing. I mean, I'm not going to say that going to a tournament where you're, that's bad. But I would also say that the kids that really get good are the kids that love to practice. And then they're working on their craft and their skills. And I oftentimes, that's the other side of travel that it turns into, at least from a basketball perspective, it turns into a lot of, 1v1 ISO, like everybody's trying to show their talent at these games, and they don't really learn how to play. We've often seen that actually we call it old man basketball on Sundays when the old guys, when I was growing up, I played a lot with the old guys, right? Like we played with the older high school guys when we were in junior high. We played with the just graduated guys. Sometimes we'd play with the older guys that we didn't even know still had skills, but were really good and kicked our butt. But I noticed that when we play with some of these kids that they just don't know how to play basketball anymore, and in a traditional free kind of run environment, right? Like, so I don't know. I guess what are you guys' opinions on that?
Well, basketball is kind of an animal
true.
Of its own.
True.
It's really turned over. One of the things Chuck Ripster, our basketball coach, and I talked about, and I asked him about this, was I watched a highlight film of Steph Curry, and not Steph Curry in a game, but Steph Curry before the game, and what he does every game, when he can or when he's available to do it. And I believe it's probably most every game.
Yeah.
Or, that's 84 times a year, not including the playoffs. And it's about a 45-minute
warm up.
just skills.
Yep.
I mean, things that a lot of people don't really want to do. And why is Steph Curry? Because of that, not because of what happens, once the whistle blows and the game starts.
Yeah.
And you watch that, I loved going out, and when I go to college football games, I love going out and watching pregame and warm up.
Yeah, I do too.
And because I want to watch what the best people are doing
To get better.
when they do that. And one of the things we did at North Muskegon was I watched Ohio State versus Michigan State when Troy Smith was the quarterback. And so I watched the entire warm-up of what their quarterbacks did with their centers. And at that time, we had Troy Fortin, who was a really good quarterback, was a pitcher at Western Michigan for 4 years. He was our quarterback, and I changed what we did in warm-ups to do exactly what I said. This is what Troy Smith was doing and Ohio State's quarterbacks were doing, and this is what we're going to start doing in pregame. And we did, and it's that repetition part of it. But you watch the great ones, and you watch them when it's not showtime.
And that's what a lot of people miss, right?
Yeah, if you want to do extraordinary things, then you have to do extraordinary things in your preparation.
That's a good.
Right. Yes. It's not always glamorous.
Right. Well, so I always use the analogy. I was in the service, and I jumped out of planes, which I don't know how I ever did it, but I would never
Somebody
do it
pushed
now.
you.
Nobody pushed me. They would have, but that whole 3-week training, and frankly, everything you do in the military, that's what it is. It's repetition. For 3 weeks, we learned how to fall, right? I mean, we learned how to fall out of a plane. We learned how to fall when we hit the ground, and just 3 straight weeks of over and over and over. What you see is the cool shot of the plane going over and guys' chutes opening, but what you miss is the 3 weeks that you went through every day for 12 hours a day, learning how to fall to do that. And I think that's the piece, what you're getting at, and what that people miss a lot of.
Absolutely. We used to talk about in football all the time at practice. There are 22 people running around at one time, 11 of who are trying to take your head off. So if you have to stop and think about everything that you do and you can't make it, and the mundane becomes a normal part. I said, and the only way you get better at that is by redoing it and repetition part of it. And guys, they don't like it, and
nobody does.
Nobody
right?
necessarily does, right? It's hard to be, it's hard to be good at football. It's hard to be good at basketball. It's hard to be good at anything, or really good if you're not willing to do some of those things there. There's the gifted athletes that are out there. I mean, there are people that would be good the moment they show up, and they frustrate a lot of us. In math class, that you get frustrated because somebody picks up something easily and you have to practice at it but that's sort of the reality of it.
Well, but talent will only take you so far too. Those folks might make it to a college level, but they could have been a Division I level, or they might make it to Division I level. They could have been a pro. They can be a pro. So I mean, I think eventually it hits everybody. It's just when.
Yeah.
I
agree.
No, that's an interesting topic. I mean, we could have a whole podcast, I think, just on that. So how do you get the kids to love it? Does that make sense? How do you get them to do it? I mean, as a guy that's done it for a long time.
Well, I've always said, and when we're watching younger kids compete, and I watch this with my daughters, and and one of the things we tried to stress at home was, you have to be able to compete, and you're going to be good when you try the hardest that you can, and that you're probably going to get beat, or you're going to fail, or it's not going to go well.
Right.
And you come back the next day, and it's like, okay, that's a learning experience, and so you can see some kids have that.
It's just natural.
Some of my, not best athletes at all, but you recognize right away, all right, she's going to come out, she's going to play JV girls basketball 100 miles an hour, and it's going to go bad, but she's going to come back tomorrow, and she'll get frustrated, but she'll come back tomorrow, and she'll be right back at it. And so those kids you don't have to worry about. I mean, it's like, okay, I never have to worry about her because I know that she's got that there. And you have to get kids used to that. Hey, you got to, it's easy to win. I mean, it's not necessarily easy to win, but it's easy once you're winning to come back and practice. It's not so easy when you're getting your butt kicked.
Right.
And can you still, I'm going to give every bit I got and fail.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. That happens a lot.
Yeah, being comfortable with failing.
Yeah.
It's all about failure.
I knew my kids, it was a turn this year with golf. I knew both of them were going to be decent golfers when they stopped asking me to go play and they started asking, can we go to the range?
Right.
And then I don't like going to the range, frankly. And so I'm like, well, can't we go play? No, I want to go chip and putt. I want to hit balls.
I got to ask, did you play this weekend?
I did not. Someone was gunning for me.
So because the last time that you played, you lost to him, right?
I did, lost to both of them. So they were gunning
I don't know if you got
for
your
me.
rematch yet or not.
They won't. I'm not going to say that because I'll be eating crow. I think they're young, they're flexible, they turn better.
Can't get that
back.
Anymore.
Like some of it, I guess. But yeah, no.
So North Muskegon, what was the one sport that North Muskegon hangs his hat on? Because I think they're good. I think they're good at a lot of different things, and they've been over the course of time. Each sport has had its moments, sometimes at the same time, but like. And how do you think that has happened? I mean, just being a smaller school, a lot of times when you see smaller schools that successful, they're usually private. But when you have a small public school like that, how is that able to happen?
Yeah, a lot of times it depends on the group. If you have a group of athletes that come through that are pretty good and they're all playing the same sport, we tend to be pretty good at those things. My daughters happen to have 4 or 5 girls that wanted to play volleyball, that were good athletes, and we were state title, state runner-up back-to-back years, and then we lost in the regional final the year before that. And so everybody's like, wow, North Muskegon's a great volleyball school, and we always have been. I mean, Carol Bailey was our coach for a long time, and we were constantly successly
great golfer, by the way.
I was going to say, I've seen her out of White Lake before, right?
The queen of White Lake, yes, right, for sure. Right now we have, 2 years ago, or even last year, we had a lot of our girls athletes are great soccer players, and they've played a long time. And so when you have a lot of good athletes that come together in one sport, you're going to be pretty successful in that. And that's really kind of so North Muskegon's, way. I mean, we had a year where we won the girls' state track title.
Yeah.
Why? Because we had about 9 girls they were good athletes, they were fast, and they wanted to do it. And so, you get those every once in a while. And being consistent, it's not always easy. And with our league, it's really tough to be consistent because there's a lot of good competition in our league.
Yeah, for a small school.
I mean, Zach will tell you, having played against, Oak Ridge and Montague and Whitehall and North Muskegon to a certain extent and all the schools.
Absolutely.
And they've all been really good. I coached football and Shelby was a playoff team the 4 or 5 years that I was the head coach in football. So, you've had a lot of parity at times and things that are good. But, we tend to have those, groups that come together, and when they're all involved in that same sport, we tend to do pretty well, be pretty competitive.
You're right. Like in golf, you had the Beckstroms, that helps.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
North Muskegon golf was good for a long
Colby
time.
Beckstrom's warming up on the tee, and I can remember Walt Galkowski telling me, he said he was the golf coach that year, and he goes, I'm going to just go out there on the tee one time and just start yelling at him. He said, you got to work. You got to do this. You got to do this. And then just watch everybody in the background laugh at him because they know darn well that,
they're good.
Hey, you got a chauffeur's license. You're a great golf coach, right?
So I
Walt.
have a funny JJ and Colby story. So they were probably maybe 6 to 10 years behind me. And I played in a junior event at Oceana, and I got paired with them. Like, I think it was like last names or something. And then they were little, they were young, and they weren't even. Mark, I think, finagled it so that they could actually play in this event. And I remember I'm playing with these 2 little kids, right? Like, because I was probably 14, 15, right? Like, I'm playing with these 2 little kids, and they had to have been. I mean, JJ was probably, I don't know, he's probably 10. Maybe, and maybe younger, and then Colby was like little, could barely carry his own bag, it seemed like. They made the turn and they both shot like 43, 44, and they both beat me. And I was like, holy crap, you know, like, who are these kids? That's the first time I ever met them. And I'm like, those kids are going to be good. And they didn't hit it far yet. It was just, I was like, I remember my dad making fun of me. He's like, you just get your butt kicked. He goes, if you can't beat 10-year-olds, how are you going to compete in varsity golf? And I was like, did you see what they, so it was just kind of funny. Yeah.
Yeah, those two were phenomenal. And like you said, our golf teams, we had some good players along with them, but certainly when you put the Mr. Golf out there 2 or 3 times, you're going to be pretty successful. And that's true probably anywhere, though. I mean, it's not just a small school, but you get somebody that extraordinary, and certainly they both were.
Oh, yeah.
We had a pretty good run in golf there.
Any parting shots by anybody? Because we're getting close.
Oh, yeah, we're getting really
here.
close. Scott's helping me out here. So one last question, I think. How do you feel about the conference expansion?
It'll be different. Certainly, it's going to be a strange. We were talking about this at the conference track meet, that this was the last time these schools will come together as a conference. I certainly think for North Muskegon and for Ravenna, we'll be the sort of the bigger schools, maybe.
Be a different role.
On that. Yeah, maybe have a different role in terms of where we're at. And football-wise, obviously, is the most dramatic. I think we've been, fairly competitive
every year.
But it'll be a different. It'll be a different scenario for football for sure, and track for sure as well. I mean, I think, to not have to go against Whitehall in a dual meet where, it's great competition. But you look at the score at the end of the meet and somebody's like, oh, you got killed, and it's like, well, the people that we ran really well, and so you'll see some differences there. And
so probably some more, a couple of conference championship banners, I would assume, for probably North Muskegon and Ravenna.
I would think so.
Shelby.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be nice. I talked to Chuck Ripster, who said basketball will look a lot different. And what our crossover schedule will be. I mean, we've played, we've had Whitehall, 2 games against Whitehall in basketball for 50 years. What will that look like next year? And
I'm gonna guess Chuck's gonna leave Whitehall off the schedule. It's just
I don't know anything about that. I'm just a guy. I don't know anything about that stuff.
Why? We're trying to end this podcast, right?
I know. I'll let that go. But no, it should be. I think it'll definitely be different. Yeah,
for sure.
Well, we do have to wrap it up. And Al, it was a pleasure to meet you and a pleasure to sit down and talk with you. And I'm sure we'll have you back sometime. And I really appreciate the time that you put in. So thank you.
Congrats on a wonderful career, too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Coaching.
Thank you.
And this will wrap up episode 29 of the CatchMark SportsNet podcast. Again, I want to thank our sponsors, Van Dyke Mortgage, North Grove Breweries, and I'm probably leaving a whole bunch out, but without them, we couldn't do what we do here, and we couldn't, which is honor local athletics and local teams. So this is Brent Raeth, and I'm signing out for CatchMark SportsNet.
See you, everyone.
We'll see you guys.